Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney save. I am so happy to finally be back and saying those words and making another build for the save file. It's been a break and some time off from me. I did kind of explain what was going on right before my break, so I'm not going to rehash all of that, but I'm back. I'm ready to go. I'm excited to move forward with Sulani. We are starting a brand new movie today, and that would be Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, this movie is not going to get as much focus as some of the other ones that we've previously done. There is another film that is going to take up the next largest chunk and the last bit of Sulani, but we have a couple of Pirates of the Caribbean builds and one Creative Sim video that's going to include at least 3 characters so far. Obviously, you could guess who those probably are. If you're a longtime viewer of the save file, you know that Tia Dalma is already in the save file from a extra bonus special lot that's in Willow Creek. Her shack has been built as well and is actually located on the mystery hidden lot in Willow Creek that you can access from going through the tree in Sylvan Glade. So of course I knew that I was going to be doing a little bit more Pirates of the Caribbean. I did know that it wasn't going to be a huge part of the save. I'm not going to be doing anything more than a couple of smaller style builds, but I'm excited to be able to include this movie. So we are actually building a rental today. This is the rental for Sulani. I like to try to include at least one per world, and this was originally going to be a Lilo and Stitch rental. I had originally picked out a location called Jumba and Pleakley's Bed and Not Breakfast, which was from the Lilo and Stitch cartoon TV show. That it's kind of like Jumba's ship stationed on the ground for good, and there's some kind of an episode where they use it as a bed and breakfast style ship, so it was going to be like a spaceship style little hotel rental. And I tried and I built like literally 4 versions of that build on this lot, and I hated every single one of them. I think it's a combination of the fact that this is kind of a smaller lot, which I knew going into it that it was going to be a tight fit. But when you're trying to build a spaceship, one of the things that I do is try to use a lot of roof pieces to make lots of rounded sides and curves, and even just like the addition of the curved foundations and curved walls in the game is helpful, but it wasn't looking right. And I do feel like you need a little bit more space when it comes to the curved platforms because they don't line up with stairs very easily. They just create a lot of issues when building. Part of that build, even in its best form that I was happy-ish with, was kind of off the lot, and it just didn't look close enough to how it actually looks in the film for me to be happy with it. So I decided I was going to brainstorm, go back, and maybe pick out something different for this lot. And ultimately, my fiance was the one who came up with this idea to create the Governor's Mansion from the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, although it is shown in a few of the other films, because we could get away with kind of the concept that some of the characters do live here at certain points, but then there's other points where none of the characters are living here. So it makes sense that it might be empty and you could have it as a rental. Now, I will be including a lot of the key characters from Pirates of the Caribbean, but they won't live here by default. This is the rental for the save file. You could, as I highly recommend for those of you who might be disappointed not to have like a dedicated save family for Pirates of the Caribbean, easily move those townies into this household and just switch it to a residential and play with them as a household. So you have the option. By default for the save file, it's going to come as a rental, but if you wanted to, you could move in the characters that I'll be creating in a few videos from now and then have it that way if you would like to. Now, as far as the build itself, it is a mansion and it's obviously a lot bigger in the film, but we are working with a smaller space here, making sort of like a condensed version. And I didn't want to create some colossal build with a bunch of servants' rooms, even though that's very much how this house would be in the film and in real life. Elizabeth and her father lived here and likely had many stay-in servants, so there would probably be upwards of 4, 5, 6 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms, but this is basically just like a representation of this building, so it just isn't as big. It has 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and the bottom floor is meant to be, you know, somewhat similar to the film. There's definitely some references. I had the film playing next to me and in the background when I was working on it, so the front entryway, the stairs, some of the rooms adjacent to the front entryway that you can see very clearly from the opening scenes of the film home. I tried to stick as closely as possible to what I was seeing, but then of course there's a lot of this mansion that just isn't shown, so I kind of went off of my own floor plan from there. The design of it is meant to be more of like a period appropriate building. It obviously looks a little out of place for Sulani because it is, even in the Caribbean, this would have been sort of an out of place building, not necessarily in the fact that it is like, during that time, it was a colonized area. This is very much a colonized European style building in an area where it is not meant to be. So things around it don't look very similar at all. And that's kind of okay in this instance. A lot of times when I do builds and we have like these movies crossover that are from different time periods and have different styles of building, I try to sort of ignore the background a little bit, but here it actually makes a lot of sense that the things around it might not look exactly like what this looks like. But alongside the European aspect of it, there is a little bit of like local culture. So there are some hints and some sort of like things in it that don't feel as European. There's some tiling and some really cool sort of, I call it Sulani, right? Because this isn't the Caribbean, but some Sulani furniture, some Sulani prints and things like that to kind of give the idea that it's got a little bit more of like where it is located in the world, which in this case is Sulani. But you would probably see that in a build like this in real life. It would be mostly European looking, but it might have some different furniture and some things that you wouldn't necessarily see across seas. So it's a mix of both, leaning a little bit more towards the European aspect of it, especially with like these tropical plants and the Sulani plants that kind of take over this front area here. That's really where I wanted to bring in a lot of like the local plants and Sulani shrubbery and things like that to make it look a little bit more like it fits into the area. One of the things that made this build the most challenging was actually the stairs on the immediate interior, because it's probably in real life a very long, thin building. So there is a scene in the very beginning of the first Pirates movie where Elizabeth comes down the stairs and you can see this like beautiful, really grand, slightly winding staircase. It comes around in like an L shape on a curved wall down into the main front foyer where Will is like kind of waiting for her. And there is a window behind her, which means that that front staircase runs the entire length of the house because she's standing at the back windows of the home. And that sections the house out into pretty much like 3 sections, right? Because you've got that middle part that runs all the way to the back wall where you can see the windows are there that are the back part of the building. And then you've got the left and right side of the house. So when I was originally designing the home, I was trying to find ways to not section the house off this way because it makes the rooms really long and narrow. And I knew that that definitely meant we weren't going to fit very many bedrooms in here. So if we did want to do any kind of servants' rooms or anything like that, it just wasn't going to fit the way that I was cutting the house out. And so originally I had a version of the home where the stairs didn't have the windows on them, but it didn't really look right. It wasn't correct for the movie. I mean, it's not even correct as it is because it has sort of a curve to it that's not possible currently in the game with stairs. So ultimately decided that we were probably going to have to make it run the length of the house and have those back windows there and do this really, really giant grand staircase, but it does cut the house up quite a bit. So the 2 bedrooms are upstairs. We have Elizabeth's room and her father's, and then the general living quarters are downstairs, which does include a library sort of area and an office, which obviously her father would probably use and need. And then there is a sort of rather large dining room area and a kitchen and bathroom, as well as a bathroom upstairs. I didn't include all of the footage for this entire home, mostly because it's sort of repetitive. When it comes to mansions, I tend to like select a set of furniture and then repeat it. Everything kind of matches. Whereas like a more modern lived-in sort of home, every room has its own theme and everything might be a little bit mismatchy. With these really, really upscale mansions, especially for like his given character and the status that he is, he would probably have somebody come in and design his home, and they would bring in like curtains and everything would just sort of match room to room. So it gets a little bit repetitive when you're watching it. Like the decor is pretty much similar and some of the paintings repeat a little bit. I try not to do that too much, but we are a little bit limited on like those bigger regal style traditional sort of paintings. So I have included a little bit of the front entryway, and then the immediate sort of like family room slash sitting area, office, and library, and then Elizabeth's room, which I know many of you were probably wanting to see, and that is probably the room that gets shown most in the house. There's multiple scenes of her getting dressed, running through, and being in that room, so I was able to get some pretty good reference for that. You can sort of see what I mean here with the tile that I've chosen for the floor, which I know looks kind of out of place for this build, and it definitely sort of is, but it is almost identical to the one that they have in the film. There's some tiling on the floors and on the walls, which I think for a build like this, if it was actually in England, for example, it just wouldn't probably have something like that. I don't believe for this time period. You'd probably see more wood or cement or just a different sort of tile. I think this one looks a little bit more culturally in line with Sulani or like Caribbean style. So there is like a little bit of a mix, and then the plants that are in the house have to be tropical, right? So there are some flowers that are around, and you can see those very much in the film, but for the bigger plants and like the little trees that are tucked into the corner and some of those like potted plants on the shelf, I wanted to go a little bit more tropical with it because those are obviously things that they could get a little bit more readily given the area. And now there is some like nautical theming in here. There's very much like explorer, adventurer, books, maps, globes, some little ship and pirate references here and there, but I didn't want to go crazy with it because the next build that we're doing for Pirates of the Caribbean is a dedicated pirates build. It is a location that is for the pirates. So we will have all of like the pirate stuff in that build. And this is at the end of the day the governor's house, and he does not like pirates. So it's not like you're going to see a lot of that around. You might see like some nautical theming. Like I thought that maybe the steering wheel for the ship was okay, but other than that, like you're not going to see like buoys, knives, swords, rum bottles, things like that that are like Pirates of the Caribbean themed, but probably just don't fit this particular build. But for the next one, they will. It's going to be the lot right next door to this. Again, a smaller condensed version of something that's a little bit larger from the film, but still cool to see like the representation from the film at all. It was really nice to be able to sit down and watch at least the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean when I was doing this first one. I haven't seen those films in so long, and it reminds me of Sea of Thieves, one of my all-time favorite games that I was heavily into. If you have been around since I've been Twitch streaming, you know that that was something I used to like play on stream, and I love pirates. I love the theming and all of it. There's also some other stuff coming up that will be more pirates themed, not Pirates of the Caribbean, but just pirates in general for a future film, the last film of Sulani, which I keep hinting at. I'm sure many of you have guessed what it will be, but that is like kind of how we're going to round out Sulani as well. So there is much more to come if you're a fan of that theme as well as me. Now, Elizabeth's room, the final part of this home, it's probably in this build longer than how it is shown in the film, but again, it's a set sort of thing, so they can make it whatever shape they want to. It doesn't actually have to fit inside of the house. I don't actually think that the house that they made in the film is real. Based on like what I was looking at for references, it looks computer generated, possibly CGI, or it is a actual building, but they've sort of like touched up the front of it to make it look a certain way, because it doesn't quite look all there in the film if you really look at it. So regardless, the shape of the room probably not so similar, but I really tried to look at the background when Elizabeth is walking around her room and see some of the things that she touches and that you can see tucked into corners. She has a lot more stuff and a lot more clutter, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of like period appropriate clutter, and so I would rather just not put it in the space a lot of times than have it be like a super modern looking piece that just doesn't make sense for the area. I did recently purchase the high school years pack, and it actually came in handy for her room. That is the high school years, or one of the high school years beds, and I know like looking at it, maybe you're like, no, that doesn't quite fit, but I just think because some of the detailing in the wood and the colors and the tones to it, it just fit. It felt very much her to me, and there's some clutter from that pack as well, some little like makeup pieces and piles of clothes, and like I said, I would like to add more to this build and to this particular room to have it be a little bit more lived in and cluttered and have lots of makeup and jewelry kind of laying around but we don't have many that are like appropriate for the time without some like modern looking tray or mirror or like a hair dryer attached to a set kind of a deal. So rather than use those things, I tend to just leave them out and have the room look a little bit more sparse. But I still think it kind of gives the vibe. I hope that you like it, and I hope you enjoyed today's build. The next build will be a Pirates of the Caribbean community lot. Stay tuned for that. If you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all in the next one.